I'm Heather Vale.
And I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones.
And we're sitting in Marshall Sylver's mansion, which is how many square feet?
Prosperity Palace is 17,000 square feet.
17,000 square foot mansion. And we are appropriately enough talking about ways that you can become prosperous as well. And now we're going to talk about what Marshall calls irresistible influence, which sounds pretty intriguing.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics, actually. I believe that everything that you want that you don't have, you're going to get from other people. And so you've got to learn the skill set of irresistible influence. And it's not just selling. I take it one step further. I believe that influence isn't getting somebody else to say yes. That what influence is getting someone else to ask you for what you're selling. And here's the part that's going to make you tingle. Have them believe it was their idea.
Okay.
And so what's exciting about that is you're really shifting their subconscious mind.
Yeah.
So before I talk about what irresistible influence is and how to get there, I want to do some foundational lessons on what influence is and how it's created. When you believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation to sell it. And the converse is also true. When you don't believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation not to sell it, even if it changed.
Yeah.
Even if at one point you believed in something and then suddenly you didn't, both sides, you have an ethical obligation to sell or not sell based upon whether or not you stand behind the products or believe in those products. I think most...
Okay, well that takes a big weight off a lot of salespeople who, that's the main thing holding them back. Oh, I don't really believe in my product. So
Well,
okay, get rid of it.
Absolutely, and that's the question. And the question is, why would you sell something you didn't believe in unless it was just for money? And if you don't believe in it and you're selling, you're stealing. So don't do it.
Okay.
And when you believe in something, that comes through. Since in hypnosis we know every single thought has a psychosomatic response, it's those tells when people are communicating, whether they're positive tells or negative tells, that influence people. I get on stage and at my events when I'm offering up my products and services for sale, I sell extremely well. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that I'm one of the best in the world at selling from a platform. And most of my battle is done because I believe so much in what I do. I believe so much in what we teach and so much of what our programs can do for people that authenticity communicates through. So when I see salespeople selling things that they don't believe in, first thing I tell them is you can't do that anymore. It's unethical, it's immoral. So the foundation of influence is always a highly assumptive one, meaning I'm doing someone else a favor when I'm influencing them because I know what the outcome on the other side of that is.
Okay, what if they believe in the product, but they're having a mental block over the price?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, I'm selling a service, I can sell my service for this much, okay, this is cool, this much, and then you reach the part where it's like, no, I can't sell it for that much. Then what do you do?
Well, if it's an individual, if it's the person selling that has that challenge, then the question is it really worth whatever that price point is that was their ceiling?
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Years ago, I got a call from a seminar friend of mine that I didn't know at the time, and he called me up and he said, we want you to come out and do your hypnotic stage show. What would you charge? And I said, that'd be $25,000. He said, oh my God, is that the best you can do? I said, yeah, that's the bottom price, that's the investment. He said, well, what if I let you lecture the next day at my conference? I said, then I'd let you pay me another $25K. And he said, no, you don't understand. He said, what if you came to my conference and you sold something and you got to keep the money? I said, how many people at the conference? He said, 1,000 people. I didn't have a booking during the dates he was asking me for, so my belief is always take a bad gig until a good gig comes along. So I took the date.
Okay.
Flew out to Atlanta, lectured in front of 1,000 people, did my show at night, blew their minds, came back the next day, as I do in my lectures, and I explained how I did everything in the show.
Wow.
And more importantly, how to apply it to their lives. So how to apply it to relationships, how to apply it to building wealth, emotional, mental, physical, and even spiritual well-being. And at the end of my talk, I offered up a $500 seminar. When I offered up the $500 seminar to the audience, 800 people ran to the back to buy.
Wow.
So in the course of 90 minutes, I sold $400,000 worth of goods, which means if I had charged them 50 grand, that's all I would have made.
Yeah.
In essence, I multiplied my income 8 times over. While I was standing there, I'm thinking how excited he must be that I sold so well, and his people wanted my product so much. He's looking at me and he's kind of glaring at me, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I bet he wishes he had taken a split from this, taken some of the money.
Yeah.
And I said, are you upset because you didn't get a split? He said, no, I'll get a split next time. He said, I'm okay with it right now. He said, I'm upset that you didn't sell it for enough. And I thought about that. So the next time I had an opportunity to sell my seminar, I bumped it up to $750. Didn't see any drop. I bumped it up to $1,000, didn't see any drop. Bumped it up to $1,500, no drop. $2,000, no drop. $2,500, slight drop.
Okay.
And so I realized that was the price point that most people would vote with their wallets at. So, if I'm the seller, if I'm a person selling, then I want to test what it is. Because the cost of something is also a determining factor for the buyer's commitment level. In other words, here's the question. If you're watching this interview for free, maybe you've gotten a sample, or maybe you haven't quite invested in the entire series yet, I bet you'll take better notes when you invest in the series.
Right.
That, if you've got nothing at stake, you've got nothing to lose.
Right.
If you've got something at stake, you'll figure out how to get greater value out. So it's kind of like what we talked about in a previous interview, that kid that wanted to come play the piano at my wedding for $15 an hour. I said, heck no, kid. If you had told me $500 an hour, I might hire you. But immediately, whatever that price point is, there is an immediate attachment of perception to it. And so you can underprice yourself, which is what most people do, to the point where people won't buy from you because you've underpriced yourself. I see a lot of online marketers making this mistake, that they offer up so much free content, they offer up so much for so little, that ultimately they have a hard time ever charging for anything, because people say, hey, I could get this information anywhere, and you've been giving it away for free for so long, why should I pay?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in romance. If somebody gets into a relationship or a situation that doesn't lift them up and doesn't build them up, they begin to think that's normal.
Yeah.
I myself was in many toxic relationships before I met my amazing wife, Erica. And I thought that's just how it was. I thought that's how people interact. Yet when I finally was single and I thought I might settle down with somebody for the third time, I said to God, God, give me someone kind. That's all I want. Someone kind, drama-free. And what happened was, because I asked for that, I said, I don't care what form it shows up in. Now, my wife is substantially younger than me. She's 24 years younger than me, if you have any doubts about the power of hypnosis. And ultimately, we couldn't be a better match for each other. At least that's my feeling, and I pray she feels the same way. I believe she does, because I set about going about things in a dramatically different fashion. So I think that, irresistible influence is, number one, understanding that you must become the authority on the topic. You must not ask anymore. You must tell. You must direct. Hypnotists, we don't ask people to respond. We tell them what they're going to do and respond. And so when you believe in a product, you've got to operate as if you were a doctor writing a prescription. They don't say, hey, would you like to take this? They say, no, take this over, get it filled, and see me in 2 weeks. There's no questions involved. Part of influence is understanding that all buying decisions are based first on emotion and then backed up with logic.
Yeah.
Back to the $400,000 car. Nobody needs a $400,000 automobile or a 17,000 square foot home until you've driven one and lived in one.
Okay.
And so, since all buying decisions are based first on emotion, then backed up with logic, I drive the car, it feels good. I think, yeah, I could pick up clients in this car. Yeah, I could do more business. I could put a picture of this on a slide at the back of my talk and create validation that I'm a success. Your brain starts to justify the reason that you can and need to afford that price point.
Okay.
The other thing, though, the last thought on this is, your subconscious mind is your emotional mind. Your conscious mind is your logical mind. Therefore, all buying decisions are based first subconsciously and then backed up consciously.
Okay, so when you talk about irresistible influence, you're talking about influencing the subconscious mind, the emotional level?
What I said as a definition at the top of this interview was that influence is the ability to get someone else to ask you for what you're selling and have them believe it was their idea.
And that has to be on a subconscious level.
It always is on a subconscious level, because conscious is logic and conscious is conversation.
Yeah.
So subconscious is that way of speaking directly to the subconscious mind without the conscious critical factor being the gatekeeper that it is, just setting aside that critical factor and allowing the programs, the suggestions, the influence to speak directly to the subconscious mind so that it doesn't resist.
Okay.
What about, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a quick example if I may.
Absolutely.
So I give this communication to you, and the communication is real simple. I say, refreshing, cool, and delicious. What's refreshing, cool, and delicious? You can
Water,
say
I would assume.
the water, right? What happened just now was I held up my hand with nothing there, and I said refreshing, cool, delicious, and then the water entered the space.
Okay.
So while you're sitting there going, what the heck is he talking about, right?
Yeah.
When I put the water in there, your brain says, oh, I get it. It's the water that's refreshing, cool, and delicious.
Okay.
Whereas if I hold the water up and I say refreshing, cool, delicious, your mind still says, well, prove it. By setting aside that critical factor, having you come to the conclusion, I set aside your likeliness or even ability to resist because you came to the conclusion yourself.
Let me, we're going to do that ending cut. We're going to get in a little trouble. Can we take the label off and do that segment again?
It's a no him.
No,
He can.
there's a name brand showing clearly.
But it's
Well,
not
I
name.
just gave him a good plug.
Steve.
Cool.
That's why he's safe, and
There you go.
that's why he's rich and smart. So I'm cool with that.
There you go.
You said rich.
Looks. Okay, cool. And
Is
we're,
he rich?
we're doing this again?
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Refreshing, cool, delicious. What's refreshing, cool, and delicious?
I guess the water.
The water, exactly. What I did just now was I could have held the water up like this and said, refreshing, cool, delicious. Your brain, your conscious critical factor, will still say, well, then prove it.
Okay.
Whereas in the meantime, if you're looking at me like as I'm holding my hand up with nothing there, like I'm crazy, what happens is I say refreshing, cool, delicious. Your brain says, what's refreshing, cool, and delicious? And when the water enters that space, it's called a geographical embedded command. When the water enters that space, you complete the connection. You say, oh, the water is cool, delicious, refreshing, or whatever I gave it as attributes.
Yeah, okay.
So what happens is, influence is the ability to set aside that critical factor and get people to come to their own conclusions without resistance.
Okay, but you set up a little bit of cognitive dissonance for me because you're saying refreshing, cool, delicious. I'm picturing all kinds of other beverages like, I don't know, punch or
Right.
orange
And then he's-
juice
then
or
he's putting
something.
that in
and
the
then he puts the
space.
water and I'm like, oh, it's just water. Come on.
I don't think you consciously thought that. I think subconsciously you thought that's what I was thinking. I mean, you
And yes, you just decided what it was. Just like I just said. You came to the conclusion, you completed that equation
Yeah.
so that I didn't have to complete it for you, which can cause resistance.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, in influence, one of the things that I know is that by now, you know you can be influenced. And by now, you also realize that people watching this want to be influenced. And if by now, the influence that I gave you caused you to go from where you are to being a millionaire or even a multimillionaire, then you would certainly, by now.
Are you purposely? Yes, you
Yes,
are.
I am.
Yes,
I
you
am.
are.
And that which,
mentioned by now.
because your subconscious mind can't spell by now. That's the thing, is that once again, most people don't realize that they're being sold all the time. And either they're being sold for things that would benefit them, concepts, ideas, products, services, or they're being sold on concepts, services, and products and ideas that don't serve them. A lot of times I see the subconscious block for people that want to be better salespeople or better people of influence is that they're afraid to sell. And so they're kind of apologetic. And so if
Because people don't like to be sold to, so therefore they don't like to sell.
which again is a pauper's mentality. I like to buy things. You know, I don't know if you noticed my watch. I'm often asked how much does a watch like this cost, and this isn't actually a watch. This is actually 3 condos in the Las Vegas market.
Wow.
And the thing is, those that are afraid to buy are always afraid to sell. And that's what I had said before, is that psychosomatically, every thought we think creates a physical response in the body. And so if I'm afraid to buy, if I think someone's pulling the wool over my eyes when they sell me something, then I'm going to resist them and go, you're not selling me anything.
Yeah.
The danger of that is what happens is that when I go to sell something, I telegraph the exact same thoughts, which causes me to be less effective as a person of influence. So what I teach people to do is realize that there's one way to win at Monopoly, and that is to buy everything you land on. Halfway through the game, it'll look like you're losing. Halfway through the game, you'll run out of money. And you'll have to mortgage properties, get half their value just to buy more properties. And you have to pay 15% interest on top of that. Except if you do that, what happens is, by the middle of the game, you're out of cash. By the end of the game, though, it's come back to you. You're able to put houses on and hotels on there and collect bigger rents, and you win. Most people understand that that's how you win at Monopoly. What most people don't understand is that's how you win economically as well. No risk, no goodies. As you sow, so shall you. What you plant grows.
Yeah.
And so if you want to make money, you got to plant money. Now, it doesn't have to be actual cash, although often it is. It has to also be value. So once again, oftentimes people will say, oh, I don't want that. I would never want that. What they're saying is maybe they don't want it. Maybe they don't want it because they don't think they can afford it. When I do my seminars and I offer up long-term training at the end of my programs, people will come back to the back and they'll say, man, I really want to go, but I don't have the money.
Right.
And so what I often train people to do is ask them, what value do you have? Do you have some product or service that you could offer me in return? Or do you have some product or service that you could offer this other student over here in return so they pay your tuition?
Barter, chickens.
Well, that's partly barter, except it's also understanding that you have inherent value.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example directly from my seminar. I have a guy, he wants to go to my seminar. He stands up, he says, I want to go, I just don't have money. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I own a boat, I do fishing charters. I said, really, what do you charge for a fishing charter? He said, I charge $500 for people to go out and fish with me for 4 hours. I said, great. If I could get you 10 clients right now that would pay for 10 half days, but they'd only pay $250, I'm guessing, what are your expenses? 50 bucks in gas, maybe? He goes, yeah, maybe. So if I can get you 10 people that will plunk down 250 bucks a piece, $2,500 right now, my seminar's $2,000, would you sign up for my seminar? He said, sure. I said, who in this audience likes to fish and thinks that's a great deal? 15 hands went up.
Okay.
He sold them all on the spot.
Wow.
And so once again, that's the distinction that millionaires and billionaires, we don't see what we can do. We figure out what we want to do, and then we work backwards. When Steve Wynn went to build the Mirage here in Las Vegas, all of the naysayers said, there's no way it's going to be a success. You're building this volcano, you're building this place where the dolphins are going to jump. It's going to cost you $1 million a day just to stay in business. In other words, they have to gamble and lose $1 million a day just to stay in business. Well, as they say, the rest is history. Steve Wynn changed the face of Las Vegas by building the Mirage and all the subsequent beautiful resorts that he built. And now Vegas is one of the most booming cities in the country, which is why we all live here.
Yeah, okay. So give an example people can use of how to influence ethically. And I'm assuming it's not just by now insert it into your sentences as you're talking to people.
It's not just that. It's two things. It's number one, realizing there's some very basic steps to what I call the persuasion equation.
Okay.
Number one, you got to gain rapport with people. They've got to trust you. And if you're not trustworthy, then become trustworthy. So they've got to trust you. And trust and rapport is gained through congruency.
Okay.
When the words that you speak and the way that you say the words and the way you carry yourself all match, that's congruent. Off camera, Steve and I were talking about, why would I live here? And part of the reason I live here is evidence of what I do. It's to show people this is what hypnosis can do for you. This is what it did for me. So number one, gain rapport. Number two, and this is where most people fall short when they seek to influence others, and that is elicit the other person's outcome. In other words, don't sell what you're selling, sell what they're buying.
Okay.
So if I elicit your outcome and I know that what you want, let's say I'm a realtor, and you tell me I'm looking for a home for my family, I don't say to you, let's go take a look at houses, because that's not what you asked me for.
Right.
You asked me for a home, and there's a difference. So I elicit your outcome because my job as a person of influence is to take the thing that I'm selling and frame it in such a way that it looks like what you want.
Okay.
If I take any of the works of art around the palace here and I put a different frame around it, the entire piece of art will be viewed differently. So number one, gain rapport, and you do that by being congruent, by being trustworthy. Number two, elicit the other person's outcome. Number three, give them a directive, tell them what to do. I guess we've covered just about everything. The only question that remains is how soon you'll be enjoying the home that you now want. Let's sit down and take care of the paperwork. Come with me. So those are all directives. In hypnosis, Steve would teach you, and I will teach you, that small commitments lead to large commitments. If I'm doing my hypnotic stage show, I don't bring everybody up on stage and then hypnotize them all to sing like Madonna. No, first I want to hypnotize them to just close their eyes. Then I want to hypnotize them to relax their neck muscles. Then I want to hypnotize them to lean on the person beside them, because each and every response that they follow, each and every directive that they do, that I've directed them to do, makes it easier for a bigger and bigger and bigger directive to be followed without question. Now, the only time a person will ever say no is when they fear a loss. If I offer up a $3,000 seminar to you and you're positive, you've seen validation in other students, you've had rave reviews, everything I'm saying makes sense to you, and you know that $3,000 investment is going to come back as $1 million over 12 months, it's a brain dead decision. Only a moron wouldn't invest in that seminar. And so at that point, I've created rapport, I've got trust, I've elicited outcome, I've made sure that I'm selling what they want. If I stand up on a stage of professional photographers, I'm going to speak and frame my offer in a different way than I would if I was standing in front of a group of real estate investors.
Okay.
So gain rapport, elicit outcome, frame what I'm selling to look like what they want, and then give a directive. Here's how you acquire the thing that I'm selling. The only time a person will say no is if they fear a loss. If they fear a loss, what I have to do is give more validation, give more information, and then give a directive again in a different way. And I repeat those last two steps back and forth until the influence is done. Now, on a previous interview, we talked about something, and I called it target-rich environments. One of the things that most people fall short on, let's say they get involved in an MLM or a network marketing opportunity. They go back and talk to all their friends and family and they say, hey, you got to really come, drink this juice with me, or, take these vitamins. And the truth is their friends and family have heard them go through one money-making program to the next, and every month it's something different, and they're exhausted.
Yeah.
I tell people, don't even talk to your friends and family. Don't even offer up to them, because Jesus didn't do miracles in his own city. They're going to be the most resistive to you.
Yeah.
Go talk to strangers. Talk to the dry cleaner that you drop your clothes off at. Talk to your realtor. Talk to the people that serve you coffee at Starbucks. Those are a better target-rich environment. And a target-rich environment is somebody that would likely want what you're selling. Again, it's the old joke. They could sell ice to an Eskimo.
Yeah.
Well, why would you though? Why would the Eskimo buy it?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you go sell ice to somebody in the middle of the desert? That would make more sense.
Yeah.
So not only would they want your product, they also could afford your product.
But see, okay, now you've brought up, this is a belief people have about salespeople. It's like, okay, a good salesperson can sell ice to an Eskimo, therefore sales is manipulative, therefore sales is selling me something I don't want, I don't need.
Are you talking about the beliefs of the individual
Yeah.
doing the selling?
Both,
Okay,
because what happens is people don't like being sold to, and so they take that mindset
Right.
into doing sales.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about what to do and action steps you can take and how to get into the mind of the person you're selling to. How about the individual's mind who's doing the selling? What must they change in order to be able to do this?
They must believe they're doing a favor. And again, I said it. You said, he can sell ice to an Eskimo. I said, why would you?
Yeah.
I said, why would you do that? Even if you could, why would you?
Right.
So in other words, I don't sell things to people that really don't want them, because I don't think they're going to use them. I don't need to. What I sell has enough application that there are more than enough customers for my products.
Okay.
And again, it comes back down to that ethics. And this is what you were asking. What does an individual have to have in their brain? And I said it before. If you don't believe in what you're selling, stop. I see a lot of people, not just online, offline, selling absolute crap. Mm-hmm. And stop it. Don't do it. Find good stuff. Create better products. That's why you guys are working hard as you create these series of interviews for people. And, good stuff, ultimately the truth is always revealed. So if something is good, if it is valuable, ultimately that value will be revealed. For me, though, as a salesperson, one of the first things I had to do was find what I loved selling, what I knew really did help people.
Right.
And then beyond that, I had to also recognize that I'm doing somebody else a favor. So I don't feel bad when they say no to me. I don't feel bad for me. Mm-hmm. I feel bad for them. At my, whenever I am on stage selling anything, one of the first things I do is ask the audience who believes I'm going to try to sell you something. And the audience all put their hands up, and I tell them, I will not let you down. I'm not going to try even. I'm going to sell you something. It's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for the entire economy. And then a lot of times I'll see people, in the example of selling from a platform, from a stage, they'll be covert about it. And they'll say, oh, my talk is 95% content, 5% sales.
Yeah.
And my question is, how do you differentiate that? I mean, how could you possibly split percentages?
Right.
My entire presentation is content. My entire presentation is sales. So it's 200%.
Right.
I'll give you an example that also answers your question directly from my talks. In my talks, I tell the audience that I'm going to bring one person from the audience up on stage. It's going to look like all I'm doing is having a conversation with them. And at the same time, though, I'm going to sell them something they didn't even know they wanted. And when I'm done, they're going to say thank you. And they didn't even want when I started, except when I'm done, they're going to say thank you and be grateful that I sold them that thing. And then the thing that I sell them is I sell them on eating fire. In fact, I don't even just sell them on eating fire. I sell them on commanding me to hand them a torch and commanding me to light it up so that they can eat fire. They've never eaten fire in their life.
Oh
And
my
I've
goodness.
seen him do this, by
Now,
the way.
Okay.
and if you think about it, Heather, there's no real logic to why there'd be any benefit for the common person, the ordinary individual to eat fire.
Empowerment, I would think.
Maybe.
Okay.
So once again, it gets back to that thing. Nobody needs a $400,000 automobile to get from point A to point B.
Nobody needs to eat fire.
Until you drive one or until you've eaten the fire.
Okay.
And then you understand the benefits of that.
Right.
And so, a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. So if I'm selling something to somebody that they really don't want, yet I know what's on the other side of that, and I know how their life will change forever, then what happens is I'm doing them a favor.
Right.
And so what I encourage all salespeople to do, including you guys, which clearly you do, that is find out what people need. That's why that elicitation of outcome is so important. Find out what they need. And then lose the fear. Inside my mind, this is the question you asked, what does an effective salesperson have to do? Lose the fear. It's not about you. You don't need other people's approval to be a good human being. They're not voting on you, they're voting with their wallet for what they want in their lives.
Yeah.
And like I said, oftentimes people aren't influential because they offer too much for too little. I've watched some people that, they offer too much where the person finally says, there's got to be something wrong here.
Right.
This couldn't be. How could I get so much value?
Yeah.
And I watch people that I've coached actually increase their margins dramatically by doing one thing, and that is upping their price point.
Yeah.
And this happened to me when I had my office in Beverly Hills. I had my first client call who was an actor, a famous actor who I won't reveal because I don't have permission to do so. But I mentioned my price. My price had just gone up. I'm convinced that if my price hadn't gone up and he'd heard my price, it'd be just like you talked about hiring the $15 an hour piano player. He would have said no thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, well, people, that's one of the beliefs is you get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So people
Perception of value.
Absolutely.
But
And
you-
I'm very, very expensive.
And you know what you've done is you've taken off one of the biggest stumbling blocks that salespeople have, which is they're afraid of the no.
Mm-hmm.
So they're constantly counting either how many no's does it take to get to a yes, or oh my goodness,
Which is
I can't
ridiculous,
face
by
another-
the way.
Or it's like I can't face another no. But I mean, you've pretty much said, okay, it doesn't matter if someone says no. They're not your target audience. They're not.
Well, it's not personal. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's not personal. And,
Yeah.
and the old adage of, it takes 9 no's to get to a yes, or however many it takes. Yes, there are percentages. When I step on a platform and I'm selling something at a particular price point, I know, given a qualified audience, what percentage is likely to buy my product. I know that from years and years and years of experience. At the same time, though, I would never in a million years think, okay, I'm going to get 9 no's before I hear yes. What I'm going to do is constantly rehearse, review, revise my presentation until it's as effective as it can be in inspiring, influencing as many people as are qualified. Oftentimes I'll be on a platform with multiple speakers, and we'll all be back in the green room, to go out and speak before our turn. And I'll see speakers back there changing their presentation, actually writing their slides minutes before they go on stage. I've been on the stage on the platform since I was 7 years old, 44 years. I wouldn't dream of changing my presentation the next 5 minutes before getting on stage. Because what I've done is I've taken the presentation and exactly crafted that script word for word for word for word for word till I can get the utmost response. And I would never dream of changing everything because then it's not a split test anymore.
Yeah.
Then I can't know what works.
Well, maybe they're changing it because they were inspired by something you did and you said. It's like,
Or
oh
maybe
my
they're just-
goodness.
they're probably
Well,
just nervous.
Could be. Yeah, I think that's what it is. They're ill-prepared. But here's one more thing, and this is very important. My whole message, my belief, is that when people understand how the economy actually works, that there's a good economy when people are buying and selling, and a bad economy when everybody's holding tight to their money. So one of the things that happens is that when an economy is bad, sometimes people focus on the economy itself being bad, not realizing it's not their economy. It doesn't have to be their economy, that you can take charge in any time and start operating in a different way. The question to ask yourself is, what worked last week or last year or 5 years ago? Is it working now or is it not? And once again, you can tell whether or not it's working because people vote with their wallets. If somebody walks up to me at the end of a talk that I gave that I was selling something, they say, oh my gosh, you're the greatest speaker I've ever seen. I say, great, then I'll see you at my seminar. Oh no, I didn't buy it. What I know is that I didn't impact them. Because if I had, they'd have bought it. They'd have invested. They'd have voted with their wallets.
Right.
And let me give you another example.
Okay.
Hello. Pretend we've never met before. Hello.
Hi.
My name is Marshall, and you are?
I'm Heather. Nice to
Hello.
meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Hello. My name is Marshall Sylver, and you are?
Steve G. Jones.
You notice that distinction? I gave my first name to you. You automatically gave me your first name back. I gave my first and last name to Steve G. Jones. He gave first and last back.
He always
Of course,
does that.
you could say that. I always say that.
Could be.
I knew
Could
you
be.
would say that. But I think Marshall's right.
You get back what you send out.
Yeah.
I don't even think I said my name. I just said hi, nice to meet you.
You said your name.
Oh, did I? Okay.
1, 2, 3, water wink. The point is, you get back what you send out. So if you're a salesperson and a lot of people are saying no to you, it's because you're fun to say no to. And the key is to figure out how to be fun to say yes to. How to send out a message that people want to say yes back to you.